This is GZO. Welcome back to the studio. In this video, I revisit some of my old favorite practices, drawing cartoons and experimenting with new materials. First, I wanted to draw cartoons for funsies. Recently, I found out that one of my favorite adult cartoons, Futurama, got a revival for an additional season. Inspired by the revival, I wanted to dedicate space in my sketchbook to one of the funniest cartoon characters. Look familiar? Apart from doing this for fun, I used this mini project to revisit some of my old art materials. I wanted to complete this project using my old Copic markers and pens. So of course I tested them out. Now, I've had these Copic markers for a very long time. Years, in fact. These were the first batch of Copic markers I purchased with one of my first paychecks. So I was really proud of these. Unfortunately, most of them were dried out and their color couldn't be restored. I did my best to use up what little ink was left in the few Copic markers that weren't dried out. Desperate for a way to finish this character in markers somehow, I opened some really old cases to access old art supplies that could hopefully do the trick. So I went into storage for this one. Unfortunately, once again, the quality of these old art supplies was not what I had hoped for. I still wanted to color Hypnotoad ASAP though, so in my impatience, I even tried out acrylic painting for the first time ever, and I liked it. Acrylic is pretty fun. I will definitely dedicate a video to that for another time. I colored Hypnotoad best I could with my newly discovered acrylic paint. I ended up taking a break and coming back to my sketchbook after a few days. You can see here I finished painting the Hypnotoad. Oh, and I added Bender. I painted him using acrylic too. The great thing about the acrylic paint is that it actually didn't bleed through the page and the colors held up pretty well. However, this left me with the need to rectify my situation and update my art supplies ASAP. And that's exactly what I did. I bought some new alcohol-based markers from an extremely popular brand I've been eyeing for a while now. While I wait for my new purchase to arrive, I decided to start working on the new drawings I've been anxious to get done. I had this project in my head for a while. These are inspired by another one of my favorite shows of all time. You may know it by its English name, Ugly Betty, but I know the original as Betty la Fea. In December 2023, I actually binge-watched the entire thing, finishing all 144 episodes on my own. And I did not realize how deeply this show would resonate with me in my 20s. I wanted to dedicate these pages in my sketchbook to Betty la Fea sketches. The first page is her first depiction in the first half of the series, and the second page is her glow-up following her development in the second half of the series. Her character growth is not only super entertaining to watch because of the shenanigans and drama that happens in the novela, but also super encouraging. The show takes place within the context of the fashion world, so I learned a lot. It definitely inspired me to look into studying fashion and clothing design sketches, especially since there were always colorful outfits showcased throughout the TV series. Because I'm such a fan of the original Betty series, I'd love to make these into stickers. So I drew Betty's iconic full-body outfits, 2 close-ups of her smiling face, as well as a chibi version of herself fawning over her main crush throughout the show, Don Armando. I also included a chibi version of Don Armando crying over Betty, because that's literally all he would ever do was yell and scream her name. Betty! Hilarious. Just like the Hypnotoad, while I waited for my new art supplies to come in, I tried my best to use up what little ink was left in the few Copic markers I had that hadn't dried out. Woohoo! Okay, my new supplies finally came in today. What did I order? The 48 pack of Ohuhu Markers. These markers have been all over the internet for a while, and I finally got my hands on them. Now that I've bought them, let's try them out. I took a standard sheet of white printer paper and began swatching the markers. Swatching is a way to test and organize the color pigments. Each of these samples is labeled and grouped into the same color palette. And look at the strength of these pigments. I love the solid, vibrant shades. These are pretty good. And for the price, definitely worth what I was expecting. Good quality. I took full advantage of the new Ohuhu Markers to finish coloring the pages I didn't get to finish before. So let's take a look. Here are the finished results. My goal with this sketchbook is to fill up the pages using double spread layouts. However, sometimes when materials bleed through the page, it forces me to skip a page and focus on one sheet sketches. For instance, a bit of a teaser on this page right here. See how it bled through? All right, with the markers I purchased, I finally colored the first Hypnotoad with the kaleidoscopic color scheme I was going for, and finished coloring in Bender's catchphrase. Once again, since I wanted to fill up both pages as a spread showcasing the same character, I dedicated the first page to Hypnotoad, since he is obviously the best character in the Futurama series. I could not use the Ohuhu markers because they are very heavy and strong. Any alcohol-based colors can bleed through the paper. I had to avoid any ink bleeding through the page and ruining what I worked on beforehand on the other side. So I got creative and had some fun using my trusty highlighter and focused on using my artist Faber-Castell black ink pens to design the page in a way that still fits the Hypnotoad's hypnosis pattern. Let's zoom in here to check out the details. With the black ink pens, I decided to practice my cross-hatching skills to mimic the effect of a black and white comic page. I was hoping to produce the same effect as screen tones that are used in manga. This method of comic shading uses screen tones or dots printed on a transparent paper, which is often used in comic books or cartoons to render a characteristic paper-like texture. It's just a way of shading and adding texture, and this is the traditional method. Established comic artists would ink their pages and characters traditionally, like I have, and then apply the screen tones by cutting them to fit the shapes that needed to be shaded. While I don't think I achieved the effect of screen tones, I still got to practice traditional black and white shading and layering techniques using black ink pens to get the details I wanted. Practicing my technique aside, I had fun creating these groovy lines for the repeating hypnotic patterns emanating outside of the Hypnotoad. His influence to capture the audience never stops. So, all glory to the Hypnotoad. I'm glad I finished the 2-page spread for my Hypnotoad. I finished coloring in my tribute to Betty La Fea, and I love how vibrant the colors pop on her outfits. It's exactly what I wanted. Behind this, I paper clipped the swatches for the Ohuhu markers. I placed the swatching page in between Hypnotoad and Betty since I used the alcohol markers as the coloring method for both. And this way I can look back on these pages for future reference. Thus far, I think I've been successful in my current sketchbook layout. What do you think? If you liked the video, please give it a like, thumbs up, or comment. What else do you think I should explore? What other materials should I experiment with? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe for more.